With over 200 inhabited Greek islands to pick from to go on your next Greek island vacation, it can be hard to pick the one that is going to be right for you. Today in this video, I'm going to discuss some of the things that you should consider when making that decision. And there are lots of things to consider when making this decision on which Greek island to visit on your holiday. One of the things that you need to consider is the time of year that you're coming. Because believe it or not, it is not warm in Greece all of the year. So if you're really wanting a beach holiday, you need to come in the summer. And if you're not used to cold water, then you need to come later in the summer. So some of the best times to come are in May and June, and then in September and October, because you're going to miss the crowds. July and August is very, very hot and also very, very crowded. And some islands, while no islands really close, a lot of islands become very quiet in the off season. Santorini tends to be one of those islands, even though it's one of the most popular islands. A lot of the more popular bars and restaurants and hotels do close in the off season. And that's the case on a lot of islands. A lot of hotels will close from, say, the 1st of October, sometimes mid-October, until Greek Easter, which varies every year. So usually hotels will open around the Orthodox Easter time, or maybe a week or two before that, depending on how late in the year it is. So that's usually in April or May. One of the other things that you want to consider is whether or not you are comfortable taking a ferry or if you're wanting to fly to a Greek island, because most of the islands do not have an airport. So you need to go and look and see if the island that you're wanting to go to, if you're wanting to go by plane, has an airport. And not all of them have an international airport. So if you're looking to fly direct, you need to see what your options are. Some of the ones that have airports are Santorini, obviously, Crete, Rhodes, Kos, Mykonos, Paros, Corfu in the Ionian, and some of the smaller islands do too. Those, except for maybe for the exception of Naxos and Paros, a lot of those do have international airports. Now, if you're coming from the US, a direct flight to the islands might not be a possibility, but you could maybe do your transfer in, say, London or Paris or Frankfurt, and then fly to an island from there if you wanted to skip Athens entirely. Another thing you want to consider about the ferry ride is the length of ferry ride. Not everybody is comfortable with a really long boat ride. So you need to go and say, okay, I'm gonna fly into Athens and I'm gonna take the ferry to this island. How long is it gonna take me? Is there a possibility of taking a fast ferry so that way I don't have to be on the ferry as long? Or is there a slow ferry, because I don't want to be on the fast ferry because I know that there's a potential for seasickness on those as well. I would say one of the biggest things that you want to think about and do a lot of research on is what you want to do on your holiday. I see a lot of people in forums saying, okay, I've booked my trip and I've booked my ferry to, let's say, Naxos, but what do I do when I'm there? And I think that it's probably the wrong way about doing something or planning a trip, especially to Greece, because if you're wanting to go to the beach every day, there are certain islands where the beaches are nicer and there are lots of options for beaches. Santorini is not actually one of those islands. They are volcanic beaches, and they're very rough and hard and hot. Are you wanting an island with lots of history, whether that's ancient history or island history, things like that? Are you wanting an island with nightlife? Maybe you're coming to go clubbing. Do you want an island where there's lots to do, or do you want an island that's super quiet and peaceful? Some people want to have a very active holiday, so they want to go hiking, they want to go cycling, or they want to do water sports. And while a lot of the islands have those, they may not all have those, so you need to look and see which one of those things is possible on those islands. Another thing that I see some people, not everyone, but some people saying, well, I want to go to an island because I want to see the blue and white houses. Well, not all of the islands have blue and white houses. Those are mainly the Cycladic Islands. So don't say I want to go to the Mamma Mia Island and I want to see blue and white houses, because it's not the same island. Next is price. And this is going to vary by person, obviously, because if you're coming here on a budget, then going to Mykonos and Santorini is probably not the place that you want to go, because they are some of the most expensive islands. However, some people are like, I want to go to a small, quiet island, but they don't think about the fact that there are probably not as many hotels. So the hotels on those smaller, quieter islands can sometimes be more expensive because there's a very limited amount of hotel rooms on the island. And on some of these smaller, more remote islands, like when I went to Iraklia and Skounusa recently, I discovered that food is more expensive. And it makes sense because everything has to be shipped to the islands. So they either have to fly the supplies to Naxos or put them on the ferry to those small islands. And so that all adds to the cost. It also gives you less options for budget type restaurants sometimes. When I was in Iraklia, there was a Euro place down the street from my hotel, but it was only open for dinner. So if you wanted to have sort of an inexpensive lunch, you almost had to make it yourself, because everything else was a little bit more like a full meal style in a taverna than it was like, oh, I can go here and grab a sandwich or something like a salad for lunch. Along with price is sort of the issue of public transportation on the islands. If you're coming and you're not planning on renting a car, you need to look and see what your options are for public transportation. Is there a bus? Are there water taxis? How am I going to get to those things on the island? And are they within my budget? Most of the buses on the islands are fairly inexpensive. So I wouldn't say that's a huge expense, but if you're going to be taking the bus every day, multiple times a day, and you're on a budget, you need to consider that. And some of the larger islands, like Naxos or Crete, you're definitely going to need to take a bus if you're not renting a car. So you need to take into consideration, hey, I'm probably going to need to allot anywhere from 10 to 20 euros for like a couple of days on an island per person for public transportation. Alternatively, you can also rent a car, but obviously that's a lot more expensive. And if you're like me and you need an automatic car, it's going to be more expensive, and there are a few of those on the island. So if you don't want to take public transportation, then you need to pick an island in which you can walk to most of the places that you want to see. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to see the entire island. It may just be that you're happy to stay in the main town because there's a beach nearby and there are plenty of hotels and tavernas within walking distance of where you want to be on that island. Another thing that you might consider is whether or not you're coming by yourself, or you're coming in a group, or you're coming with a large family, and maybe you have young kids and maybe some older adults. And I say this because some islands are just more family friendly, or what I would say more accessible for people who maybe have mobility issues. They're flatter. There's not as many stairs to get to your hotel room. The beaches have areas in which kids can swim in. The other thing you want to consider is there going to be a place for our large group to stay in? Now, maybe you don't care and you're all going to rent individual hotel rooms, but maybe you want a place where you can rent a villa so you can all be together. So if you pick an island that doesn't have villas, or pick an island that has really expensive villas, like Mykonos, you may decide, okay, this might not be the island for us, or we need to consider the fact that some of the people on our trip are on a budget and some are not. So where can we have a happy medium? And if we split a villa, is it going to be more affordable for everybody to come? Now, if you're coming solo, it's a little bit easier in the sense that you don't need to think about anybody but yourself. However, traveling solo anywhere can make it more expensive. So if you're coming and you're on a budget, is there a hostel on the island? Even if it means you're going to get a private room on the hostel, does that at least means that maybe the price will be lower? Is there a cooking facility? So maybe there isn't a hostel, but you can stay in a fairly inexpensive like pension, and you could have a kitchen so you can at least have breakfast and lunch maybe there. And can I walk around so I'm not having to rent a car or get on the bus a lot? So those are some things to consider about traveling solo. Do you want to go to more than one island? Because if you do, that needs to sort of also dictate where those two islands are. Now, if you're going to a very large island like Crete or Corfu, there's a small chance that you may be able to fly to another island. However, if you're not going to one of those and you want to take the ferry to another island, you need to see what your ferry options are. So many times I see people saying, well, I booked a hotel on this island and I've booked a hotel on this island for these dates, but there are no ferries on the dates from this island to this island when I need to be there. What do I do? And sometimes the answer is there is nothing you can do because there is no ferry from one island to the next. So then you're going to have to go back to Athens and then go from Athens to that other island. And if you have the time, like if you're dead set on doing these two islands and you've got 12, 15 days, go for it. But if you're here on a limited amount of time, then you need to pick islands that are on the same ferry route. A really great app that you can use either online or on their app is Ferry Hopper. It's who I use to book all of my ferry tickets. And they actually have something that has like a map, of the ferry routes. So you can say, okay, I want to go to Eos, and then it'll show you all of the places that the ferry goes from Eos. Now, you do have to put in your specific days to make sure that it's going on the day that you need, but at least gives you a general idea of what your options are. And you're probably thinking to yourself now, Tiffany, this is all great, but how do I find out all this information? Like, what I would do is Google. Go in and say, okay, I really want to be here at this time. I'm traveling with these people. This is how long I have. I don't necessarily if I'd put in like my budget, but just to see what your options are first, and then you can narrow it down based on budget. So look at other people's blogs, like my website, which is the name of my channel. Look on my channel because there's a possibility that I have been to the islands that you are researching. Look at Reddit. Look at big travel websites like Condé Nast and things like that. Look in National Geographic. Sometimes they have a whole section on different things to do. They have a travel section. Look in your local newspapers, maybe online, but a lot of those will have suggestions. If you think, oh, I want to do these 3 islands, do research on those specific islands, and then you can say, okay, no, those aren't for me, so I need to do more research. Or yes, I like that one, so I'm going to do that one. The other thing I would say about checking blogs and even YouTube videos is a lot of times that stuff becomes very quickly out of date. And it's not the fault of the person making the blog or the vlog, it's just things move quickly. And like, I don't go back often enough to places to know when all of the restaurants close. I do try to stay up to date with that, but not everybody can do that. So, have a general idea and then go on to individual restaurants and hotel websites to find out more information. I will include a link to my website in the description box because there is some really good information, at least I think, about Greece in there, not just places to go, but also how to get around and things like that. I will also link to Ferry Hopper in the description below, so please do check that out if you're booking a trip. And feel free to ask questions in the comments below. I will try to do my best to answer them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.